All of that, including the healthcare, including the treatment, including the everything that I got from my GP, made me feel so suicidal. It wasn't even a joke. And one of the main reasons for that was because I just kept thinking my suffering is never going to end. The people that are supposed to be supporting me are even supporting me. So what? Am I just gonna die like here? Am I just gonna lay here in bed? And I can laugh about it now and joke around and be like, "Oh God, I used to lie in the bed and be like, oh God, would you kill me?" Like honestly, it would be kinder. And funny enough, I can laugh about it now, but sadly, there are people that are still in this situation. They're still lying in their bed every single day praying for death. And a lot of these patients would actually benefit from medical cannabis. In Hi everyone, and welcome to Harmonia Podcast. Today's the intro episode. I'm very excited to get this podcast out to everybody, and I suppose just try and bring what I can to the table around awareness when it comes to plant-based medicine, in particular cannabis-based medical products. Um, so I suppose just to sort of introduce myself, I am a co-founder of EthVida. My name is Berta Kaguako, and I suppose most importantly, I am a patient that uses cannabis-based medical products and also a healthcare professional. I suppose just to give you a little bit of background around myself, I suppose I started my career off as a children's therapist, predominantly working in the trauma and abuse sector. And from there, I progressed into working with adults with substance misuse. Completely fell in love with substance misuse, the entire sector, and addiction in general, and worked my way, I suppose, up into senior management and became the bar manager for a substance misuse charity. During the pandemic, I left the charity because I wanted to go back to working with children. And I started working at a family assessment center where I continued to, I suppose, work in a senior management capacity, but also do a lot of the training and development, as well as working as the mental health and substance misuse consultant. So I know a lot of people will ask me, what is a family assessment center? It's not something that is widely known. It is a center where parents go in with their babies and we assess their parenting capacity for usually it's for children and families court proceedings. um I worked there for some time until unfortunately I got COVID for the third time, and my entire life just took a toll for the worse after that, because all of my underlying health conditions, which were previously in remission, resurfaced all at once. And I suppose that's what sort of brought me into the medical cannabis sector, because I then was initially a patient, was just completely mind blown by the medication. I mean, I'll go into my story in a bit, so you'll see the benefits of the medication has had for me. And I then went to work as a CQC registered manager in a cannabis clinic. And that's when my eyes were really opened, because although I experienced a little bit of stigma here and there, it wasn't really anything out of the ordinary. In my case, it would be, I work with children, so it's only natural that my boss be a little bit concerned and ask me a few questions. And I suppose once I explained everything to them, that was that. And I suppose they could see I was compos mentis. And I think the reality of the situation is, I guess, something I just want to really highlight, because a lot of people often forget this part. They think that when you say, okay, I have a cannabis based prescription, that you are referring to THC and you are high as a kite. That's not how the medication works. I understand that, cannabis is a substance that is misused, and as a result, and is misused because people want to get high. And so as a result, it's only natural that you associate the medication with that. Now, I suppose there are so many things to break down here, but that's really what the podcast is for. It will dive into all of these, but I like to just explain it to people in the way that If I were to go to my GP right now and tell them struggling with chronic pain, they're gonna usually start me off with something like naproxen or cocodamol, something that's a little bit more balanced, that's not really gonna give you a psychoactive sort of effect. And then when that isn't working, that's when they hit you with the heavy hitters, and that's the tramadol, the gabapentin. And it's the same with medical cannabis. Now, in some cases, don't get me wrong, some people will require the heavy hitters. In my case, I required both. I required the heavy hitters, but I also required a more balanced medication on something that was higher in CBD, which counteracts the psychoactive effects of the THC. But again, these are topics that we are going to explore as part of the podcast. But I just sort of wanted to highlight to people because I remember explaining it to my boss, like, well, first of all, you've seen tramadol on my medical records, and that hasn't really upset you. And she was like, yeah, but because you don't really pop tramadols at work. I'm like, exactly. I don't use THC at work. If I required THCs because my body has reached that level of pain that I can't tolerate anymore, therefore I am going home because I can't tolerate it anymore. So it is quite, I find it quite funny when people really are quite so nervous and are very, very quick to judge. But at the same time, I kind of have to be honest with myself. When I worked in the substance misuse sector, I did judge too. Um, in my defense, though, I did work with a lot of patients that had lost their entire lives due to substance abuse. So um, I suppose it's a little bit different in this case, but nonetheless, I was still very, very biased. When somebody would tell me about the medical effects or the medical benefits of cannabis, I would literally in my head just roll my eyes and be like, yeah, 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 yeah. I'm pretty sure that, it does something. And even though we are taught in substance misuse that there is a medical sort of benefit to it, because it's something that's not necessarily explored, we you'd only really just associate it with epilepsy because that's the only thing anyone really associates it with. When they think about medical cannabis, they think about epilepsy and how cannabis helps with seizures or Parkinson's. They don't really think about all the other stuff that cannabis supports with. But that's just me going on a tangent now. I should probably warn people I've got ADHD. I like to warn people because I will probably go on a tangent a lot. So I suppose moving on from that, yeah, my eyes were really open to the discrimination faced by a lot of patients. I was really unhappy with that. I just thought, wow, I have never seen a medication that requires advocacy. I used to pop opiates like there's no freaking tomorrow, and nobody blinked an eyelid. But I use a little bit of medical cannabis, and all of a sudden, this is a concern. That is something that really, really concerns me actually, and really needs to change. Mainly because there are so many people out there that would benefit from this medication, and I find it extremely heartbreaking that these patients are not even giving medical cannabis a chance because of the fear of having a cannabis prescription and the stigma that is involved in that. So, in terms of sort of moving towards my patient experience, I suppose my health journey sort of started at the age of 22 when I started experiencing symptoms and was diagnosed with my first condition. I had Morton's neuroma, which are benign neuromas in the nerves of your feet. There was lots of complications with that, and as a result, I had lots of aggressive treatment and lots of surgeries. And over time, more and more conditions built up on top of that, to the point where in the end I had about six, now seven with long COVID. And it took about, I think it was 5 6 years of treatment. I was taking all sorts of medications, but eventually once all the treatment ended, I spent about 2 years driving my condition into remission. And that was mainly because I don't necessarily like medication. So I wasn't happy with the fact that I spent so many years just pumping my body with all sorts. And I wanted more of a herbal approach, something that was more natural. And natural approaches sometimes do take a little bit more time, especially where at this point I had six different conditions with I think at that time was about 38 something symptoms, but now I'm averaging 40 plus. And I don't know. I think it's nearly 48. I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot of symptoms. And so I suppose just to kind of go over the condition. So unfortunately, I've got arthritis, and I have got hemianesthesia, which is a loss of sensitivity to one side of the body, or in my case, a mild, but in sometimes it can go completely paralyzed and I just can't even move that side of the body. I've got fibromyalgia. I've got a Sirens on the C6, C7 of my spine. I mentioned Morton's neuroma, although now there's a bit of a debate between is it Morton's neuroma anymore, if it's just scar tissue that's killing my feet, but well, I've given up. It's something. Um, and bilateral sciatica, which is just sciatica impacting both hips, and it is the bane of my existence. I have got on top of all of that, I suppose, yeah, like I mentioned, about 40 plus symptoms. I'm only going to go over a few of them with you because there's just so many, and there's really no need to go over so many. I just want to flag how these symptoms impacted my life and what sort of medical cannabis spared me from. Um, Pain, inflammation was unbelievable, to the point where it left me completely bedbound. I was barely able to even go to the bathroom. Um, just to manage my pain alone, I would take 12 tramadol, 12 naproxen, 12 paracetamol daily. So that's 36 tablets a day, just so that I could be comfortable enough to lay in bed. This wasn't even so that I'm okay. This was just so that I could be comfortable enough to lay in bed. And those were just for the to manage the pain. And I say manage, but it wasn't managing anything because all I could do was lay in bed and be spaced out of it because that's what opioids do to me. I'm in cloud nine. I'm in some next dimension. And let's not forget that that's just for the pain. For all of the other symptoms, I still had other medication that I was juggling for those symptoms. And then in terms of the paralysis could get very, very bad at any place, anytime. There is no warning. I could be out and about, and next thing you know, I'm flat on the floor because the paralysis has just given in. And it, again, no warning. I could be it, yeah, basically I've injured myself a lot, but I think the hardest one for me was actually trying to pee, because when it sets, it God knows how long it's gonna set for. It makes up its own mind. It's like Russian roulette here. It will decide one day that it could be for an hour, it could be for four, it could be for 5 days. The longest I've had is about 2 weeks. And in order to pee, I would literally have to grab my blankets, grab my pillows, throw them onto the floor, roll my body onto the floor, and then drag myself to the bathroom to pee. And because I was taking so much opiates as well, I was consistently overdosing, and so I was throwing up all of the time as well. It got to a point where the bathroom just became my friend. I just had a pillow there, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna stay in this bathroom because I can't keep throwing myself on the floor. That just keeps triggering more pain and more everything. um the insomnia is ridiculous. Everybody, I think everybody is aware that sleep is restorative. You need sleep with any chronic illness. Sleep is just amazing. And when I get it, I feel on fire the next day. But unfortunately, very little of it actually happens, which means my body is not necessarily restoring itself in the way that it really should be. The fainting, again, there was no warning. You would just faint left, right, and center. One of the things I started to realize was I would get really, really hot before I fainted. But that was it. And even then, you get hot, and then you know in 10 seconds I'm going down. I have set so many fires because I fainted while I was cooking because, again, not realizing heat was a trigger at that time. I would be cooking and then I would faint. And yeah, I'd injure myself really badly. Showering was really difficult because, again, heat. So I would, oh God, yeah, I've injured myself badly. Uh, you have the headaches, the migraines, the sensitivity to stimulus, and again, that just contributes to the pain. It aggravates the pain more. And I think one of the things I forgot to mention about the pain is a lot of times people often think the pain is just localized or associated to one part of the body and somewhere here, somewhere there. It is everywhere. It is in every fiber of my being. It is 24/7. I wake up in the middle of the night to go to pee. I am still in the same pain that I was in all day. My eyeballs hurt. My face hurts. These glasses hurt my face. Everything hurt. This hurts. Although we're hematite beads everywhere, but everything hurts. And it never stops ever. Um, the cognitive processing, I think for me, I think there was two, the cognitive processing and the forgetfulness that for me was the most traumatizing. In terms of the cognitive processing, it got to a point where I was so scared to leave the house because I was not processing what was actually going on around me. I was not in touch with reality. Half the time I had to remind myself that I'm out and about, and that everything just felt like a dreamlike state. I've nearly got hit by several cars. I've gotten hit by at least two, tapped, whatever. But hit by at least two, and almost by several, where other people, members of the public, have had to literally pull me back because I have looked down at the road and saw nothing. I saw nothing. I didn't see a car. I didn't see nothing. And then start walking, and someone will pull me back. And the next thing you know, I'm like, whoa, what the hell was that? And I'd look back at the same road, mind you, 5 second interval. I would look back at the same road, and all of a sudden it's gridlock. Where did all these? I didn't see that. I didn't process any of that. This has happened so many times. It's absolutely frightening. And I think one of the other frightening things again was the forgetfulness and the memory loss. Like sometimes you can forget words. I find it very difficult to even understand people when they're speaking to me sometimes. All I hear is wah 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 wah, which is funny because I used to think that was just in movies. I didn't think that was a real experience that people felt. But yeah, that's a real thing. And sometimes people will be speaking to me and I'm just looking at them and I have no idea what they're saying to me. I'm too embarrassed to say anything, so I just nod my head and pretend I was listening. But that was really scary, not being able to even communicate for yourself and advocate for yourself because you can't think of words, and it hurts your brain to even try to remember anything and try to think. And I think the scariest for me was always when I would wake up and I wouldn't recognize my own room and my house, and I would wake up and used to have a panic attack because I'd be like, where am I? Where am I? How did I get here? What's going on? And it wasn't until a while that I started realizing, okay, I'm in my room, and I started implementing, like, measures to kind of help me cope in terms of like reminding myself, okay, where were you last night? Last night you were in your house and you fell asleep in your room, so it has to be your room. And sometimes I can go a whole day without recognizing my entire apartment that I've lived in for the last 6 years, five, whatever. And other times, it goes away after a few hours or so, but it's frightening that I don't even recognize the bed that I've slept in for forever. So there's just so many ways. These are just some of the small ways in which it impacts you. Like, well, to be honest, the most annoying ways in which it impacts you. There's so many ways. Like, I haven't even mentioned the teeth loss. All I can say is that was a very, very fun journey to be on. I will just wake up in the middle of the night choking on a shard of my teeth that has come out with blood gushing all out of my mouth. And that was every single night. And then you can't sleep because your teeth, like, you can't eat, you can't, like, it was horrific. And I think what made it even more challenging for me, I think, was the fact that I didn't feel supported by my GP or healthcare professionals. If anything, they took something that was a very traumatizing experience for me and turned it into a tragedy, which I was absolutely disgusted by, still am. Hence, EthVida, because patients, at the end of the day, we do have a responsibility to advocate for ourselves as well, especially where healthcare has gone downhill. I don't know what is going, I know what's going on. Like, there's just not enough resources. There's just, I know all the excuses basically that everybody comes up with, but if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, healthcare is about human beings and human beings' life and their quality of life. So You really, really should not be having excuses such as, oh, there's not enough staff. Well, let's start looking at how we can actually start employing more staff. Let's start looking at how we can actually start treating the staff that you have there fairly. I will never stop talking about this topic, so I will stop now. But just so it's clear, I am complaining about the terrible doctors, right? Because sadly, there's just too many of them. I don't care. I've said it. There's too many of them. Do not get me wrong. There's some amazing, absolutely fantastic doctors, and if it wasn't for those doctors, I really don't know where I would be, because they were the ones that advocated for me and that challenged the bad doctors. And my advice to healthcare professionals, I don't care how long you've been in the sector, listen to your patients. You haven't seen it all, okay? Every single person is unique. And I get it. Sometimes you're like, oh, I've dealt with this all the time, blah, blah, blah. But again, every single person is unique. So you need to actually listen to your patients and listen to how their health impacts them, so that you can put an appropriate healthcare plan into place and actually stop making people feel like they're a huge, massive burden. When am I not supposed to go to my GP if I'm not feeling well? Because I thought they were my primary caregiver. Where else am I supposed to go then? Anyways, I can feel the attitude coming on because they really, really wind me up. So I'm gonna stop. But it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate. All of that, including the healthcare, including the treatment, including the everything that I got from my GP, made me feel so suicidal. It wasn't even a joke. And one of the main reasons for that was because I just kept thinking my suffering is never going to end. The people that are supposed to be supporting me are even supporting me. So what? Am I just gonna die like here? Am I just gonna lay here in bed? And I can laugh about it now and joke around and be like, oh God, I used to lie in the bed and be like, oh God, would you kill me? Like, honestly, it would be kinder. And funny enough, I can laugh about it now, but sadly there are people that are still in this situation. They're still lying in their bed every single day praying for death. And a lot of these patients would actually benefit from medical cannabis. In my case, I got 75% symptom relief. It enabled me, like within 6 months, I was able to replace the majority of my medication, bar one, because I don't touch my arthritis medication. I've lost enough teeth. Thank you very much. But bar one, within 6 months, I got rid of the rest of the medication. Do take it ad hoc sometimes, whatever supply chain issues, which I'll touch on in a second. But it enabled me to stabilize and then actually go and get healthcare, because for some of us, we will require the additional healthcare because we have a lot of complex physical health needs and physical conditions and symptoms that overlap and all that kind of stuff that we require further treatment for. But I could never get to a point where I was even able to make the majority of my appointments because I was always most of the time bedbound, like 4 or 5 times, five mostly days a week. It was just excruciating. And the part that makes it even more, I suppose, confusing for me, it's on the days that you could be okay, you would be surprised how okay you are. So it never made sense to me, or at least I could not rationalize it, when one day I'm violently ill and the next day I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, but anyways, that is the nature of autoimmune diseases, I suppose. And and yeah, and so being able to implement a holistic healthcare approach is what I felt really, really helped me. And I feel that is something that is really missing a lot today. I remember as a healthcare professional, when I first went into healthcare, it was all about the holistic approach. Everybody was like, let's do this, let's do that. I don't know when it went downhill, but it has just gotten worse and worse. And since the pandemic, it's not even about the holistic approach. I feel like healthcare is just trying to slap bandages on everything. And actually, what's that solving? Who's that helping? Because that patient, when you slap a bandage on them, yeah, cool, they'll be okay for like a year, maybe even two. But when their health worsens, it usually declines much quicker. So we really need to be in a position in healthcare in general, whether it's the medical cannabis sector or whether it is the NHS or private sector, where we are trying to encourage or bring back a holistic healthcare approach. That's it. I'm just going to say, let's bring back a holistic healthcare approach. And how this fits into supply chain. When I first started with my medication and all, the supply chain, although it was bad, it wasn't as bad as it is now. And so, therefore, because I had some consistency, I was able to get myself back on track. The issues that we have now with supply chain is that there is just not much consistency anymore. No, sorry, I'm gonna go flat out. No consistency anymore. I have to fight every month for a prescription for the last year and a half now. It's ridiculous. This needs to change. I really don't care who's responsible for supply chain, but it needs to change because it impacts us as patients. For us who are genuine patients, who need this medication, because let's be honest, we all know that there's patients that don't really want to put in the work. They just want a prescription and that's it. But the rest of us, we want to put in the work because, well, I need to put in the work. It's been really, really hard. It's been really hard because every time I get myself to a point where I'm doing really, really well, I start to then go downhill again because once I don't have my medication, I can go up to 3 weeks without any medication. And that is me putting my prescription forward in advance to predate it so that I can have the medication on time. Still not arriving on time. And as a result, then after about 10 days of no medication, I start to be bedbound again. And so by the time I get my medication, I now have to recover from the huge, massive flare that I just had. Then, after I recover from the flare, get myself back to a point that I was at before. And then from there, I can start to progress. But usually, I'm not able to progress any further because from there, I'm doing another prescription and we're right back at the same situation again. So, my progression, you're slowing down our progression. So please, please, clinics, pharmacy, home office, whoever is responsible for this, please take this into consideration. Because I really don't think that this is something that people are looking into, or not something. I don't know what the word I'm trying to look for. I've been talking for too long now. The brain fog's starting to kick in. Yeah, brain fog is starting to kick in. But the point I'm trying to make is this. Yeah, not it. No, no. So this brings us, I suppose, let me round things off with why I co-founded EthVida. So for me, it was, I recognize that a holistic model is just being pushed out the window, whether it's in the medical cannabis sector, whether it's in the NHS, wherever. It's just not something that is practiced anymore, and it's something that is vital when it comes to people's well-being and trying to sort of like improve basically and sustain as well. And so I thought I would use all of my experience in terms of my professional experience and my patient experience to write various different blogs and stuff around various topics pertaining to health, well-being, social care, and how they interlink with medical cannabis, so that existing patients can start taking accountability, like for their healthcare. Let's be honest, right? I always say this medication is like juju. This medication is too good. Sorry, juju is African slang for witchcraft. This medication is too good. It's too effective, and because it's too effective, it puts you in a place where you just don't want to put in the extra work in terms of a holistic approach. And I understand that because we're tired. I'm tired too. I don't want to do it. But I also recognize the benefits that it has for me in the long run. It's also enabled me to come right down on my medications as well, and save lots of money because I'm not needing as much medications as I needed before. I've even been able to switch things around, and these are things that really should be taken into consideration when you were thinking about what are my health goals. It's not just about symptom relief, because let's not forget medical cannabis is a symptom reliever, right? And not necessarily a treatment. So you need to think of what are my long-term health goals. And I suppose, we formulated lots of different support sort of like mapping exercises that you could use, and there's a goal planner there that you can start looking at with some guidance on how to fill it out, so you can start thinking about, right, how can I look at my healthcare more holistically, and then take that plan to your GP and speak to your GP about how can you support me to do this. Take it to your initial to your consultation, whether it's your initial consultation for new patients or whether it's a follow up for existing patients. Take it to your consultation. I probably take it to the consultation first so that when you bring it to the GP, you and your consultant have discussed how you would like this to work and how you would need, I suppose, GP's additional support in terms of I suppose backing up the consultant with this. I apologize, my brain is starting to muddle up here, but the whole point I'm trying to make is I really want patients to start putting holistic healthcare into the forefront. We need to be responsible for our medication. We need to be responsible for how we use it as well. Responsible use is something that is crucial and that is absolutely vital. I think often a lot of the times people don't want to talk about substance misuse. Yeah, they just don't want to even acknowledge it. And I get it. Where you have this new medication where the world is already demonizing it and being like, oh, this is such a horrible thing. I understand that you don't also want to have to acknowledge them that, oh, this medication can be susceptible to abuse. It's nothing wrong by acknowledging that it can be susceptible to abuse like any other psychoactive substance. And like every ICD guidelines, the Substance Misuse Act guideline, like all of these guidelines, I'm not naming right guidelines, but I can't be able to think of them right now. But all of these guidelines do explain all you have to do is put preventative measures into place in terms of how you're going to support this person to not become dependent on this medication. And that's it. No one is saying you can't give that. Like, tramadol is a psychoactive medication. GPs prescribe it like they're handing out candy. So it's the issue isn't the fact that it's a psychoactive medication. The issue is the fact that we're not really risk managing around it. So it's more around how can clinics start to put this risk management measures into place to support patients around dependence and acknowledging that this is a real thing, because if we don't acknowledge it, all we are going to do is be part of the problem and just create more dependence, and that just takes away from the power of the medication. It's such an amazing medication, like, we don't. Yeah, anyways, so I'm going to just, I suppose, tidy it all up with saying that, for me, I know that I meet so many people who are struggling and so many people who want some more awareness around a variety of different topics when it comes to cannabis based medications. There are more people actually interested in it than most people would let on. A lot of them are very curious and just whisper it to you. And having this platform to be able to showcase medical cannabis from a more, I suppose, holistic approach and trying to implement more of a healthcare model element to it, is, I suppose, the take that I'm really leaning towards, because, responsible use, holistic approach, these are things that are so important when it comes to using a psychoactive medication. Um, and I want more and more patients to be able to access this medication. I want them to be able to understand that, yes, there are scary stuff to it, but if you actually put the right measures in place for yourself, the likelihood of these scary things happening to you reduces significantly. The podcast, Harmonia Podcast, Behind the Veil of Stigma, basically showcases the medical cannabis sector and helps to educate. Well, I'm hoping it will help to educate and destigmatize medical cannabis by showcasing lots of patient experiences and by showcasing the industry and what we are doing, and I suppose a sort of passion that everybody has towards pushing medical cannabis as a viable treatment option in the UK. And yeah, that's it, and I look forward to seeing everybody next week, where we start off the podcast with substance misuse. And yeah, thank you very much for joining. Bye.